closings. This year we're pacing for 245. So I've been humbled. I've learned a lot, and I also realized honestly, Brock, that I wasn't as good as I thought I was. You know, like you just gotta stay after. This is not a business you can ever take for granted.
Welcome to Loans Elevated, the podcast that brings you the latest industry news, expert interviews, and insightful discussions that will help you stay ahead in this dynamic market. I'm your host, Broch Lassig, and I've spent years in the trenches of the mortgage industry, helping individuals and businesses navigate the complex landscape of real estate financing.
I'm your co-host, TJ Heidenreich, and together we'll cover a wide range of topics, from business strategies that skyrocket your success to mindset and motivation that fuel your growth.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Loans Elevated. Today we have a very special guest. It's actually our first guest. So we said season 2 was going to have guests instead of just TJ and I talking your ear off. And this is our first one. So this guest, he is an absolute stud. I've known him for a very long time. His name's Robby Sampson. He's out of Florida, and he's actually my personal business coach. And he is an originator, mega originator, still closing something like 20, 25 loans a month, even in this tough market in 2023. So an absolute stud. Mega producer. He's been in the business 20 years, consistently producing at these levels and much higher in better markets. But even more impressive, and what I've found so much value in with my experience with Robby coaching me, is his leadership skills and his ability to lead a team and get them on a mission, buy into the vision, and be able to move forward. So without further ado, Robby, welcome to the Loans Elevated podcast.
Thanks, Brock, for having me. You probably don't know this story, but before I was a coach 8-9 years ago, I would go to summits, and I noticed you would always get there early too.
Yeah.
And I would be the one hanging out, having a good time, and you were the one grinding, bro. Like you'd get the laptop open and you would just be getting after it. And honestly, dude, I completely admired that about you, and I always have. I'm like, this guy just flat out gets after it. And so, you know, super humbled to spend some time in a few minutes here with you. But yeah, man, you're the real crusher, not me, man. I'm just here for the fun.
100%, dude. Well, I appreciate it. Clearly, I'm not doing something right because you're having more fun than me and you're closing more loans than me. So I should be learning from you. That's why you're the coach. But thanks for joining us. So, dude, tell us a little bit about your team and your branch. Just give the listeners kind of lay the land of the Robby Sampson team and branch and organization.
Cool. Yeah, man. So quick rundown, been in the business 20 years, really got serious probably in 2008, 2009 when the market crashed. In Florida at the time, Brock, there was 100,000 mortgage brokerage licenses across the state in 2007. By the end of 2008, it went from 100,000 to 10,000 of us.
Wow. So
it was Florida got just absolutely crushed. Florida, Arizona, some of those states. So it was like survival of the fittest. And there was in our market, I live in Lakeland, Florida, 110,000 people maybe live here now.
45 minutes. Small market.
Small market, man. Yeah. 45 minutes from Tampa, an hour from Orlando. Orlando has 2.5 million people. Tampa has 1.5 million. There's only 1,000 realtors in our market.
Wow.
So, and there's probably, I think there's 65 mortgage companies in the Lakeland and the surrounding.
Oh my gosh. So a tiny market saturated.
Saturated with loan officers.
Wow.
Yeah, all fighting for business. So there was me and 2 other guys at the time that were pretty decent producers, and I was much younger than them. More ambitious and hungry. I was 20, 28, 29. And so we just started taking market share. I have a team now of, we have 40 on the team. We're doing, you know what, man, we'll probably be around 800 loans closed this year.
It's insane, dude.
Last year was 1,050. The year before that was 1,600. The year before that, 1,700. So a lot of loans over the last few years. We did most of that production, honestly, and we're doing most of that production with 9 loan officers. I have 5 other loan officers, but they're very, very new, less than 1 year in the business. So they're really cutting their teeth in a tough time. So that's a little bit about us. At my peak in 2021, I had 627 closings. 2020, 617, 2019, 425, 2018, 360. You remember those numbers, like the glory years. 100%. All back to reality. Last year, I think we had 273 closings. This year, we're pacing for 245. So I've been humbled. I've learned a lot. And I also realized, honestly, Brock, that I wasn't as good as I thought I was. You know, like you just gotta stay after. This is not a business you can ever take for granted. You know, like it's September 1st today, right? The score once again is 0-0.
Yeah, exactly. Scoreboard's back to 0, dude. And it's brutal. I agree with you. All of us had a gut check. I mean, we thought we were pretty cool, closing tons of loans, and then it's like, holy cow, like this is hard. We got to get back to work. And thankfully we have a lot of, people that have been serious about the business have a lot of these skill sets. We still had them a little bit. We could remember them and build those muscles again. But one of those big things I think is, and that's what this episode is about, kind of about team. And I know you run a monster, awesome team, huge, long tenures on your team, I understand. And I do want you to hit on that. But one thing that we've had to kind of dust off is when we're not in a market that is just crazy insane with volume. Clearly we've got the issues with revenue, and that changes how, what staffing we can afford, what people are earning, including us, but also our teams. Earnings start going down. And so leadership had to really take a front seat for us for the past couple of years now. And I mean, that's clearly what you've come out ahead on, probably your whole career. And we lost sight of that, I think, for a couple of years. So maybe talk about your staff. You have a very long tenure. How do you think, what would you attribute, the one or two things would you attribute your ability to keep them on your team and bought into your vision through the thick and thin of the markets? Talk about that.
Yeah. So on my personal production team, we have, I have a 13-year LP2, loan partner to like a personal loan manager, is what we call them. People probably know what that is. That's listening into your thing. My team captain, Broch's been with me 10 years. 3 LP1, two LP1s, both been with me at least 3 years. I had other very seasoned, tenured people that eventually became like a branch lead for my operations team. She's my ops manager now, Christine. And then my other really dope LP1 became a loan officer, and last month, dude, his year and a half in the business, he had 14 closings. So
wow.
He's just an animal. Less than a year and a half. He had 19 closings one time earlier this year. He's just an animal. So
dang.
So the team stayed together. 4 things, right? We built the company around 4 things. Number one, you got to be competitive if you want to work here. So, being competitive is a big indicator, right, of what people are going to do. Just a little hack there. I hire as many college athletes as I possibly can. I was a college athlete. Some of my best loan officers and employees, my team captain was a college athlete, 10 years with me. That LP2, so he was a tennis player. That LP2, Lisa, that's been with me 13 years. She was a hurdler in college. I was a track runner in college. I got basketball players, golfers, man, just a lot of good athletes. And I think that they're competitive, so they want to win. Number 2, you got to be curious if you want to work here. Meaning you got to ask why questions. I think oftentimes, Broch, and maybe you can speak for this, but a lot of times people just want to know what the answer is and then go back to life as usual rather than trying to figure out why is that the answer, and is there a way to skirt around that to get what we need in the mortgage business? It's obviously gray and not black and white. I don't know if you see that a lot with your people. I feel like you have a team that asks probably great questions. Other
that
things,
curiosity is critical, because you don't want to be telling people how to do their job. It's like, you got to find it, man. You got to be driven, personally driven.
Yeah. So you probably have a lot of that. The next one, and then I'll get to the last one that we're going to talk a lot about here, is the next one is compassion. In this business, you got to have a lot of empathy and compassion, because not everyone's situation is perfect. And the number one emotion that people have in the home buying process is fear, right? So there's a lot of fear. I believe the best loan officers in the country, that's their number one attribute. They're really good at managing fear. I'm sure you're an expert at managing, what can happen during the loan process to make people feel at ease. So you got that one right. I think that's important, being compassionate. But then lastly, man, it's a culture fit. And so if people always ask me, well, how do you know if someone's a good culture fit? You know what, man? Curious, competitive, and compassionate normally equals good culture, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't have to, you get that feeling in your gut when you're hiring someone, and they checked all the other features and benefit boxes. And so you just simply say, okay, man, I'm going to lean in here. And I believe this person's a good culture fit. I'll be frank about culture. I did not define what culture was in my branch. 10 years ago, dude, we were knocking down, I had like 4 or 5 other LOs that are still here with me today. And we were knocking down 20, 30 deals a month before I joined the Corps. And every deal that happened, like every loan that came in, and Broch, you've heard me say this a few times, but 63% of deals in our market close late, sloppy, or not at all. Mm-hmm. And that's a big deal. And what happens is oftentimes, right, like if we told the realtor everything that happens behind the scenes on a loan, you know how they would just, it would be full out panic attacks.
Oh, 100%.
You know, like, so you tell them the major things, but the small things you just keep to yourself and you problem solve it. One of my best realtors, Broch, his name's Jordan. He's a level 3 in the Corps. He said, Robby, there's no sense in you telling me the problems, bro, because I have no clue how to fix them. It's your job to fix them. Why does the realtor want to know what the problems are? We can't fix them. I know nothing about self-employed income. So it was pretty interesting. But needless to say, man, we just, every time we arrived to a problem on loans, Broch, I would get involved and there'd be an issue. And one of our core values is a no surprise rule. So I would call you if you were the realtor and say, hey, Broch, listen, I'm so sorry. We ran into an issue. We missed a seasoning period on a credit report, or we missed this late payment, or we miscalculated this income a little bit. But hey, Broch, I know I'm sorry to tell you about, but this is what we're doing to fix it. And listen, man, we're going to land the plane. Give me a little time. And I didn't know I was doing this, but I just never had my team, which oftentimes they could have picked up the phone, because really oftentimes they made the mistake. I didn't double check it. They made the mistake. And then I just jumped. We called it, Nate, my team captain, said, dude, you just jumped on the grenade every single time. Like when there was an issue, bro, you picked up the phone, you made the tough call.
Yeah.
And he said, Robby, what happened was, I don't know how it happened, but how we built this incredible culture here at Legacy was, dude, you jumped on so many grenades for us. I felt obligated to begin to jump on them. And so, because I made the mistake, I was responsible for our team, and you were out trying to build the business and grow the business. He's like, dude, you were knocking down 30, 40 deals a month. I didn't want to disappoint you, and I didn't even want to bring you in. So Nate just started making those calls for me, and I realized, Broch, I wasn't making any more bad calls, bro. I was just like running in my lane and just crushing it. And that's why I was probably happy at Summits. I was like, yeah, we don't have no problem.
Right.
And so Nate was down there just taking them in the ribs. Boom, boom.
You became, your team treated you like the realtor then. Don't tell you about any of the issues. Just solve it, right?
Yeah, they were just solving problems, man. And he said, then other people started to see that Nate doing that for them. He would take the bullet. He would make the call, take the blame. And bro, it just spread like wildfire. And it created this like incredible amount of buy-in and loyalty and trust that we wouldn't like talk about one another, and we wouldn't put other people down, that we would just simply jump on the grenade and take the blame. And
that's
so
awesome,
like everyone says it's the food and it's the dinners out and it's the happy hours. What created and we do all those things, but man, what created our culture was me jumping on a grenade, like taking a bullet for the team, and then later Nate doing it and Charles doing it and Lisa doing it, and just my people just stepping up, bro, and just
that's awesome.
Doing what it took to get loans closed. Yeah.
Yeah, so dude. I mean, you're really 100%, which is pretty cool. I mean, it's like the law of reciprocity, that the epitome of that concept you just described in your team. It took place in real life, which is really, really cool. And it all started with you being a leader willing to serve your team's needs, right? Which is the highest level of leadership, servant leadership, and that's what you just explained too. So that's pretty incredible, and it seems like, you know, you had a large part to do with that. Your team obviously is very important, but that's impressive. And so when you think about it, this all kind of happened by accident, and it was just by you know, kind of your personal integrity, what you felt was the right thing to do, is what kind of created this wildfire. How did you guys start to delineate from a culture standpoint and be able to identify, like, it's this competitive and it's the compassion and it's the what was the third one?
Curious, competitive.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think I really just thought about, we've interviewed and hired, God, and fired probably 150 people maybe that have played a part in their life in the last 20 years of hiring and working with people. And so probably through those interview processes, I started to identify, I would look at like, we've done this before in the branch, like who's the most valuable person? If there was an MVP, who would be the MVP? And we do this thing every month where it's Employee of the Month, and people get to vote who they think. We call it Burn the Ships this year, and so they get to vote like who is a burn the ship guy, who led the team this month, who led the charge that did over and above what they could have done. And so we started to, these people were Lisas and Ambers and Christie's and Nate's and Kevin's, all these great people that work here at the branch. And when you started looking at their internal makeup, bro, it just became like, dude, Nate asked the best questions of anyone that I've ever been around. Like, he asked great questions. My sister Christy, dude, she was a college basketball. She was an honorable mention All-American in NAIA basketball. She's just a competitor. She just absolutely competes. Amber defines our culture. Just she would take any bullet for anyone in the team. And so these adjectives just begin to describe people in the branch. And so I think like it was probably 8 years ago, Broch, where I started putting pen to paper and saying, what are the ingredients of this great thing we're building? And my team knows this is like, yeah, our company's Legacy Mutual Mortgage, formerly the mortgage firm. But honestly, dude, the 40 of us, this is a personal development company that just happens to do mortgages.
Yeah, 100%. That's cool.
That's what we are, you know? So that's how we kind of define, that's how I think we came about. It was through tons of interviews and then just looking at the pedigree of all the people.
So you just took your A players and essentially distilled down to the lowest common denominator of like, what is it that they do? And you identified what.
Yeah, because I'm not that smart, so we had to do it that way.
Hey, it makes sense. And it seems like, I mean, that's a crazy thing about leadership and building a team and building a business over a long period of time that can sustain, markets like we live in today, where you guys are seeing growth in this market in, maybe not bigger production, but you're seeing market share capture and you're doing a lot of things. It's like, it takes time. You can't just turn on a light switch and suddenly you have this. As a leader, you need to understand it. And then your team, you need to basically develop leaders within your team that understand it to your level over that long tenure of time. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so, that for sure happened.
Yeah, cool. Well, let's dive in. So we were on a coaching call a few weeks ago, and I wanted to talk about your culture because I'm very impressed by it. And, I really aspire to be like you. I need to be more energetic, happier. I'm more of like an analytical, like just kind of like head down type of guy. So I aspire to be more like you for sure. You did share some things though that were way more analytical than your normal behavior is, and this is kind of how you deal with team members on a more procedural type basis, and maybe have a system on figuring out the unfortunate part, which you alluded to. At times there is a period of time where you have to separate from somebody, whether they quit or you end up firing them due to some sort of issue. Let's dive into one. Like, first thing is the questions you had on your one-on-one, because a lot of people, including myself and probably you in the past, tend to complicate these one-on-one meetings, and we're constantly changing into it. And there's no consistency with the questions we're asking, so we can't really. There's no barometer. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't know what's going on quarter over quarter. So I loved what you came up with your team member one-on-ones, which I think you do it quarterly. Dive into those questions and the significance behind those, and then after that, let's dive into your top right grading system.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So when we do these quarterly, often companies, branches of whatever, business people, they'll do an annual or maybe a semi-annual review, which typically the employee believes that it's going to lead to a pay raise. I'll preface this by everyone that works here, they know that when we do a quarterly check-in, it's not necessarily going to lead to a pay raise. So, but what we're doing is, again, it's about culture and making sure that we're hitting the target for them, and that we're continuing to grow and continuing to do the things that we need to do to move the needle. So I kept it really simple. What I did, Broch, was I kind of reverse engineered it. I was like, if I worked for a mortgage company, what questions would I want to be asked on a regular, ongoing basis that can move the needle, right? So we came up with a few. I'll give them to you as we go, and I'll give them to you in order of how we ask them.
Cool.
And then we'll take it from there. So the first thing that when someone comes in, they literally right here, they sit on my couch And I just asked them, hey, so let's jump into it. Hey, give them a quick overview of what we're trying to accomplish. And then I just simply say, hey, so number one, Brock, what's one thing right now for you that's going well? The reason I say one thing, if we say, hey, what's going well, oftentimes they can't shrink it down to something specific.
Right, you get a surface level answer.
Yeah, it's very surface level. It's like when you ask people, you ever been to like a 5 o'clock happy hour and you go to a realtor and the most common question people ask you is, hey man, how's business?
Right.
And everyone, it's just surface. Everyone just says good. So Brock, I've completely changed that. I never ever say that anymore. If I was to meet you at a mingler, I would say, hey Brock, man, what's after I introduce myself? Hey, well, what's one thing going really, really good in your business right now? So I always start there, and that gets the wheels turning.
That's super good, yeah.
So we just kind of do that. We say, hey, what's one thing that's going really well? And sometimes they say, hey, leads, or our team's dialed in, or our turn times seem really good, or sometimes it's personal. Hey, like almost everyone here has a teammate in their office. That's how we broke my office out. And they say, hey, listen, man, I've been listening to Jess on the phone, and Jess is absolutely crushing it, right? So could be something of that nature, whatever it is, right? But then I want to pin it down. What's that one thing for you that's going well?
Cool. And it doesn't matter, business or personal, just one thing that's going well. Cool.
I don't care what it is. It's got to be, sometimes it's personal. Sometimes it's business. Like many people have sat down in that chair and say, hey, I'm getting married. Hey, I'm getting divorced. Hey, I'm having a baby. Hey, someone just passed. So I got X, Y, and Z going on. So I've heard it all. The next question we ask is then it's just the opposite of that. So I would say, hey, Brock, what's that one thing right now that you feel like you're struggling with, right? Mm-hmm. And so gives them an opportunity to share, what's happening with their business. Hey, honestly, Robby, I'm really struggling with calculating Schedule C income. I don't know. And we're like, okay, awesome. And so I'm in that meeting, my ops manager's in that meeting, and we're taking notes in case we got to have a training on something, right? And so we're identifying the struggles, okay? And then the next question I ask is this question, and this is important. I want to let them know or ask them. This is right before we get into top right. It's before I ask this last question. I always say this: on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you grade yourself right now?
Got it.
I let them grade themselves, and they know. And so this is the kicker: you cannot grade yourself a 7. A 7 is a cop-out grade. So because of the level of trust we've built, oftentimes people will grade themselves a 5 or a 6, and that really, really bugs me and it irks me. But I'd rather get the truth, right? Like, hey, listen, Brock, I just haven't put up the last 3 months. I've just been checked out. I've done this, this, and this. Because if you're grading yourself a 5 or a 6 in front of your boss, they probably believe that, in most companies, that's like grounds for firing. Right. So it's just like, when that happens, I'm just like, well, hey, what do we got to do to fix it? And we try to get back on track. But so I've taken that. So I think that's something we got to do is take the number 7 out of the equation because it's a cop out. It's a cop out grade.
I forgot you gave that on the coaching call, and that I'm glad you reminded me of that because that's huge. Like that 7 is such an easy answer. It's just like, how's business? Good. That's basically a 7. Yeah.
That's a 7. Yeah, exactly. Yep. And then we wrap that up with I just taking that full circle. Remember, if I was an employee and I'm sitting around here and I'm thinking about things, so that last question is, hey, if you were me and you were sitting here in my chair, what's one thing you would do differently? So, and that question we get great feedback from that question. Sometimes they say, Robby, dude, you're hitting the nail on the head, man. We're doing a lot of things right. There's nothing right now that I could see that we could do better. Or oftentimes, man, some of our best things have come from that. Hey, do you think we could do can we have a box an idea box where we drop ideas in anonymously and this and this, and we have a compliment tree in our office, which is a big tree, and at any time people can go and write compliments on it. And like right now, there's probably 50 compliments on it. So then next Wednesday at our all branch meeting, someone hands me all 50 compliments and I read them.
Oh, that's awesome. And show the team honor and all that. Wow. Yeah.
So someone came up with that. I didn't come up with that. And just all these little cool things. They're like, hey, they'll come in and say, we have our movie night in 2 weeks. If you're probably honestly, I'm probably more like you than you think.
Okay.
They have to come in and say, hey, we should have some fun. Let's go watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Let's have fun.
Right.
So otherwise, I wouldn't have done it. So, those sort of things come from these meetings where, like, if I were you, man, I would do this. Like, sometimes they actually say, I wish you were tougher on us. Like, Robby, you don't give us enough critical feedback. But the number one thing that I get in that meeting is, I wish I could spend more time with you. If I were you, if I were you, man, I would try to spend more time with the team.
Which the cool thing about that, you lay out the landscape for them to have the opportunity to just bring something up that they wouldn't otherwise proactively bring up. In the spin of the day, they'd be intimidated to come into your office, stop you in your tracks and what you're doing. So that is money, dude. Yeah, that's really, really good.
Like today, my processing lead, her name is Ashley. She sent us an email like a few hours ago, and she was like, hey, she's a few days from having her baby, and she's still been working.
Oh,
and
wow.
she sent me and my ops manager an email, and she's like, hey, I want to go ahead, if it's okay, on the 5th to start my maternity leave. And so we're like super tight. And then I buzzed her. I called, because, we just call through the extension. I dialed 130. I'm like, hey, Ash. And she was like, what did I do? Right. And it's like, what are you talking about? She was like, every time you call me, you give me anxiety. I'm like, what are you kidding? And so I'm just like, I said two things. I said, I'm so excited for you that you're having a baby. It's your first baby.
Oh, wow.
And then I said, secondly, please, God, take as much time as you want, but you've got to come back to work for me, And she was like, what are you talking about? I'm definitely coming back. And I'm like, so you got to build, you got to have, I guess, though, there's a level of respect is kind of what I'm saying, where they're like,
yeah,
Robby's running the show, because she's like still scared if I buzz her that she did something. But then we're able to like have this wide open, candid conversation about how important she is, to the organization.
Yeah, there's clear lines. People know you're the leader, but it's not 80s style leadership. Like there's some community and culture and family and love and all of that in it, which is kind of just the new age of leadership. And I think you represent that so well. So now let's dive into all this stuff has been absolutely incredible. And I hope everybody listening is really hearing what Robby's saying, because this is like gold from a leadership standpoint, building a team. If you want to grow and scale your business, this is the stuff you need to understand. And really, I don't know if you'd agree with this, Robby, but this is maybe the most critical piece of my ability to grow my business. I stumbled for years and years and years, up and down, up and down, up and down, and I couldn't ever get any consistency. And it's because I sucked at being a leader. When I invested a ton of time into leadership and understanding some of these things, and I'm still learning constantly. I mean, that's a big reason, I have you as a coach and I love you as a coach now is for that leadership piece. But that's really like the key to long-term success, right?
Bro, look at the best sports teams ever. Look at the 80s Celtics and Lakers. Look at the 90s Bulls. I'm a basketball freak. So look at the early 2000s Spurs. The teams that were the greatest teams at the most elite level in professional sports were the teams that were together the longest.
Yep.
And they were together the longest because Phil Jackson was a Zen master. Greg Popovich did this every week, the wine breakdown, where he took them all to dinner and they had wine.
Well, dude, right? We still see books and articles and podcasts with these guys you're talking about right now. We still see that stuff, and we're still learning about that stuff today, which is crazy.
So, I mean, and then lastly, I will say this. I believe that between now, because the business is so hard, and the next 5 years, especially in the mortgage business, the companies that have the best culture from the top down, including then from the bottom up, like sometimes you're only as good as that last person in the door. And the culture has to be so good, literally from the bottom up, that those companies will move the needle and will be you're going to see a lot of big companies, bro. I do not think in the next 5 to 10 years, they will be the benchmark for the industry.
Right. The top 10 is no longer the top 10.
Yeah. I think technology is changing the game, and that's what some of these companies have done in the last 10 years. But I'm telling you, bro, culture will change the face of the mortgage industry in the next 5 years. And it's going to be a big, big deal. And I'm super excited to kind of see that, play out because of the types of employees that we have. This is not the mortgage business is getting younger.
Right.
And because of that, there's a whole nother type of leadership and a way that we have to handle, our people.
So let's dive into the hard part, which is top right. This is where you have to have, it can lead to good conversations too. but it often is the kind of the crux that leads to the difficult conversations. And this was such a simple little exercise that you can do with your team. And I was stoked when I learned it, because it's like, all right, cool. This takes the thinking and the emotions out of it. It's just like, what's the answer? Where do they sit? And this is the action you need to take. So dive into that.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'll set it up real quick. I know we're running out of time. I'll set it up. So I learned this from Jack Welch. He was the CEO of GE from 81 to 2001. I think he worked for the company as an engineer way before that. And so Jack had built GE to a 25,000 people company. Probably one of the greatest things about what Jack did with his leadership was he groomed many managers to go on from GE and leave and be great CEOs of other companies. So that's the ultimate example of great leaders, right?
Yeah.
They groom other people to be incredible leaders, either within their organization if they have the ability to scale, or those people go off and build other great companies. And Jack Welch had that ability at GE. But what he didn't have, Broch, was time. He didn't have the time between him and his key management staff to do annual reviews or quarterly reviews, but he had so many people that he had to check in, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's where we got this quarterly check-in piece was from Jack Welch and what GE was doing. And so what he did was, the managers were saying, Jack, we don't have enough time to give these formal reviews to all these people. What should we do? And so Jack came out with this top right model that really simplified it for his managers and made it easy. So it's basically this. I guess I'll explain it, and maybe I'll send you the graph.
Yeah, explain this. We'll put the graph on the screen as you're explaining. So explain, kind of give a visualization of it, and we'll put it on the screen.
Yeah. So that kind of sets it up. So a manager would sit down with his employees, and what they have is this model, and up the left side, it's kind of like an L model. Up the left side would be an aptitude what's your aptitude on a scale of 1 to 10? Aptitude for us and is just simply defined as the ability to do the job. Mm-hmm. Like how well do they do their LP1, LP2 loan officer job? How well do they do the job, right?
How well do they understand guidelines, and how can they communicate with clients?
Absolutely. Yep. How well are they doing overall with their job in regards to those pieces? Communicating, guidelines, not constantly leaning on the team for answers. Remember, one of our 4 C's is curious, right? Yep. Asking the right questions.
So a similar word, just to give a synonym to this for the listeners that may not be able to see the screen on YouTube, aptitude, I guess you would also say skill sets, right? Aptitude or skill sets.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yep. Nailed it. So on the left side is aptitude 1 to 10, and Broch, that's where we were able to lay in here when they graded themselves on a scale of 1 to 10. How do they grade themselves with their aptitude? And 7 is a cop-out grade. So we grade them. Me and my ops manager grades them, and then they grade themselves, and they bring the graph to the meeting. And so. And then at the bottom of the graph, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's attitude. Okay, so and attitude, we know exactly what that is. Yeah. Do they bring great energy every day? Are they positive? Are they a great team player? All the things that would define attitude.
Yep.
And so this is where this gets complicated, right? So what I'll do is when we grade them, they grade themselves. We do a comparison. We basically take this L graph and we break it up into 4 boxes. Okay. And I'll walk you through them right here as we go. So if someone comes in and they grade themselves a 3 in aptitude, okay, and they also grade themselves a 3 or a 4 in attitude, which by the way, that rarely happens. But if it does, they're in the bottom left box. And in the bottom left box, if you're like jotting a note for any reason here as you're listening to this, that person has to be terminated, or written up, right? So I write fire them in that bottom left box. I mean, if you're playing on my team on the attitude scale of a 3 and an aptitude scale of a 3, you're a C or a D player. You got to go anyway, right?
Yeah.
So that's very, very simple. But here's where it starts to get complicated, and this is the first really, really tough one, where oftentimes they don't choose culture, they choose competitive and they lose here. So when you have an employee who on a scale of 1 to 10, their attitude is a 9, right? But their aptitude is maybe only a 4. In most cases, a manager's like writing them up. But we know the answer there is, right, Brock? What should we do if the person attitude is a 9 or a 10 and their aptitude's a 4? What should we do with them?
We got to train those people up.
That's right, dude. You train them up. So literally, so if Michelle is falling in that circle, I don't have a Michelle, so I said that name just in case someone hears this. So if Michelle's in that circle, we write, hey, we got to train Michelle up. And then we come up with action steps on what we need to train Michelle on so that she's a better team player for her loan officer, right?
Huge.
Makes sense?
Yep.
And here's where it really gets complicated. I'll tell the story. And I had a guy, a long tenured employee. I had so much turnover in one of my departments, a lot of turnover. People were leaving and kept wondering why, because with me, he was incredible. With some of the people, he was incredible. And so on a scale of 1 to 10, Brock, his aptitude, the ability to do the job, his skill set was a 9 or a 10. You would bring him a problem, bro, and he would just solve it immediately, right? His attitude, though, was like a 2 or a 3. It was a 2 or a 3 because he was simply unapproachable. You ever met someone like that? It's like, it's the old 65-year-old underwriter who's been underwriting the same way for 30 years and doesn't want to have a conversation about their guidelines with the loan officer. So their aptitude is so high, but their attitude is so crappy that you wish you could get rid of them. And so the problem is, in most organizations, those people are key people, and they cannot let them go. They just keep them around. And you have turnover, you have people leave, they run people off. And so, but if they're in that top left box where they're a 9 or a 10 in aptitude and they're a 2 or a 3 in attitude, you have to fire them, right?
Yep.
I mean, I've had that 2 times. I had it with a loan officer I was doing coaching and training, and he was a 15 closing per month guy. We needed the revenue.
100%. You always do. It's the most painful thing to let go of, especially the skilled people, because they're the ones that train all the new people coming in. And I mean, it's a challenging decision.
It is because you will take 2 or 3 steps back for sure, organizationally, because that person was so important to the bottom line.
But the beauty is this takes that emotional consideration out of it. Like if you grade them properly and you just buy into this idea, it's like if they land on the left side of this graph, right, like they just need to go, or it's severe HR action, right? It's a legit write-up, right, and certain things. Right. And chances are when they got a bad attitude, they're just going to quit at that point anyway. So one way or the other, they're going. And then Michelle, we didn't mention this, but Michelle landed in the bottom right, which was amazing attitude. She just didn't have the skill sets, so that's why we trained her up. So now diving into top right.
Yeah. So if you don't get it yet, so if you grade out aptitude, you're 8, 9, 10. Attitude, you're at 8, 9, or 10. What should we do with those people, man, when you got them?
They're the leaders, right? They're all the people you mentioned at the beginning of this episode. They're those people. Those are the 8 by 8s, right? I mean, those are the people in that top right, which is the people you promote and take care of.
Right. Yeah, so you promote those people. You do everything you can to continue to move the needle for them professionally, sometimes monetarily, sometimes quality time, public recognition. Not everyone wants money, man. Mm-hmm. People sometimes just need recognition. And so, we work really hard on that. I don't know, like naturally. I feel like my number one, I think God put me on the planet to build something. Like I feel that I do believe in my soul that my calling is being able to take people and push them towards a like-minded vision. Like That's awesome. I believe that with all of my heart. And so it's cool that we kind of, discovered this and we use it every day. And then the kicker is with this top right piece is I literally sent it to my team yesterday. I sent them a text message this morning. We had our lead meeting. It was the end of the month lead meeting, and we're going through the leads, man. And God, now I'm getting real. Like right now, you get to see there's a lot of pain here in the progress. So I'm going through the leads with them, Brock, and there was no kidding. There was 25 times where I heard the words, Oh, I got to follow up with him. Oh, I need to call that person. Oh, I got to follow up with him. Bro, if I heard it one more time, I was
blow
going
a gasket.
I was going to flip my desk, bro. And so it's funny because Nate reads me so well. We've just been 10 years together, and he's looking for a solution to my pain, right? And so he immediately, because his leads were just tight, right? And so he immediately went and he grabs this document and he was like, hey, this is how I'm handling more things with less time. And he like walks them through something that he's working on because we know we got to get better. And so this morning, man, I sent him a text and I was like, hey, yesterday was absolutely unacceptable. Like we need to go into our Jungo. We need to clean the CRM up. I said, we are not playing top right. And so the reminder throughout our office, the thing we say the most is when someone's not playing top right, which is great attitude, great aptitude, we have the ability to have adult conversation with anyone at the office at any time that we say, hey, Broch, listen, man, I heard how you talked to that client. You were super short. You missed the mark. That's not our culture. And it's just what we've done, man. So
yeah, that is huge, dude. And it's like, the crazy thing is, like, as we just come back, when they've got a bad attitude, it might feel painful in the moment, but it's literally what holds you down from I'm sure when you let go of those people that were the left side of this graph, your business probably exploded shortly after because all these A players could actually, like, it gets uncomfortable even for us as the leader when there's a bad attitude on the team. Like, team meetings get on, like, we're biting our tongue because I'm about ready to flip out, because the attitude's bad, and then everyone's kind of on eggshells. It's crazy. But then you got these other people that you were talking about in the top right, which you have a bunch of those top rights, which is really probably the reason for so much of your success beyond, obviously, your abilities and skill sets. But those top right people, to your point, when you were coming to the summits for the core coaching, you didn't have to stress about anything. Like, they lifted your business so much, and you could execute at such a better level. So it's like, it's crazy.
Yeah. So you know what? At the end of that, though, you know what? We're doing a lot of that work again. We're with my team because we've promoted so many of our people off my team to greater roles within the branch. That it's been another opportunity for me to create and become, a better leader, which will happen to you. And you're a great leader, bro. Like, you do so many things so well, and as you continue to grow, you will want to promote and they will want to grow, and you either promote them or you lose them, right?
Right.
And so you'll find ways to move them into better leadership roles, and then it's going to give you an opportunity to recreate yourself again with your team. So that's a never-ending cycle of learning and opportunity for us to really be better.
That's huge. So. That's huge. Well, Robby, thank you so much. I know this was short notice that I asked you to get on, but it's powerful stuff. I think it'll be huge for all the people that listen. It's a lot of realtors, a lot of business people, a lot of lenders that listen to this stuff. And I think this will be powerful, especially in a challenging market. Give them some direction on how they can really improve things and do a better job. So thank you for taking some time. I know your time is very valuable. I really appreciate it, man. And I think I'll see you here in a couple of days probably.
Yeah, buddy. We'll see you soon, brother. I appreciate you, man. Keep crushing it.
Thanks, man. See ya.
Thank you for tuning in. For more industry insights, follow us on all platforms at Loans Elevated.
And to get in touch with our team, call or text 801-713-4000 or visit loanselevated.com.